especially with the law of attraction. We're taught, focus on what you want, focus on the positive, focus only on good things. Otherwise, if you focus on bad things, then, oh my God, you're going to attract just bad things. Don't ever think about the bad things ever. But the ironic part is by trying not to think about those negative or bad things, we suppress them. And it's still stuck in our energy field. It's still stuck in our spirit and our aura and our bodies physically. So find a way to... Hello, beautiful beings of light. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Monica, and today's video is titled, Are You Spiritually Bypassing Your Feelings and Others? So if you've been in the spiritual community for a while, or if you consider yourself spiritual, or if you've had an awakening in the last few years, let's say, then you might be familiar with this term spiritual bypassing. And I am relatively familiar with it. I haven't heard it talked about too much, and I think I have a general understanding of what it means, but I never really thought about it until I felt that I was doing it, and therefore it actually affected me and applied to my own life. And the way that I came upon this realization that I was spiritually bypassing my emotions and other people's emotions was one day I was talking to a friend on the phone who was having a very difficult time with something, and she told me that basically she liked that I was able to hold space for her when she was in this state, when she was very upset and emotional and kind of frantic. And she had wished that one of her other friends did the same thing, because she felt like what she said, that she basically dismissed her feelings and would basically just say very positive spiritual things to maybe try to make her feel better, and also because that was her beliefs. And I totally get that, because once she said that, I realized I did the same thing to my husband. Like, I was able to hold space for her when she was very emotional, but with my husband, I didn't treat him the same way. And it was a very subconscious thing that I didn't even realize I was doing at the time. So I'm really grateful that she brought that up, so that I could really look at that and explore that and see what I could do differently next time. And I've heard many people use the term hold space, mostly like therapists and psychiatrists and people who work in mental health, but I didn't quite fully understand what that meant until, again, I realized that I was doing it for one person and not another. And so when I think about what holding space means to me, it's basically just, for example, like I said with my friend, if they were very upset about something, instead of quickly just saying something like, it is what it is. You can't change the past. Everything happens for a reason. All of these things that I do believe, those are part of my beliefs. You could say my spiritual beliefs. And I know that she knows these things too, or she believes the same things as I do when it comes to that. So I don't really need to tell her that. She already knows. But also, I just listened for the most part. I listened to what she had to say, and I didn't just listen, I actively listened. And I tried my best not to interrupt unless I couldn't understand something she said and needed her to repeat it, or something along those lines, or if I had a question about something she was talking about. But I just let her go and get it off her chest. And so I think that's what holding space is. It's like I said, the main thing is listening, and actively listening, and listening without judgment, or at least without negative judgment. Or if you do come up with negative judgment, because we're all human, we all judge. It's just part of human nature. to not just immediately say those things, or at least think about it and try to reframe it in a way that feels like it's helpful instead of hurtful, basically. And in the end, I may have said something that I felt would help encourage her, or some advice that might help her. But I didn't cut her off and do it immediately as she was talking or before she was finished saying what she wanted to say. And in this space that I held, I allowed her to just fully feel what she was feeling. Again, without judgment, without criticism, without trying to just dismiss what she was saying and being like, oh, it's all good. Don't worry about it. It'll get better. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to say those things. I just think that it's better to leave that for the very, very end if you want. But also, maybe before that, just acknowledge, hey, you know what? That does suck. You know, I'm so sorry that happened to you. That doesn't seem fair. Like, really acknowledging that person's feelings in that moment, because not everything in life is positive. And I feel like with spiritual bypassing, we can tend to just completely dismiss the negative parts of any situation or any negative feelings someone's feeling about a situation, and just skipping over to the positive part. And I think this is also along the lines of what I've heard of people refer to as toxic positivity, which I know people have a whole debate about that. But I kind of understand, I think I kind of understand what people mean by toxic positivity, where it's like it's all one-sided. It's just all the positive and you don't acknowledge the negative. And although I agree it's not really healthy or beneficial to just dwell completely in the negative, but I also don't think it's healthy to dwell just completely in the positive either. Because when we don't acknowledge the negative feelings, the negative aspects, the negative people and situations in our lives, we can tend to suppress and repress those emotions. And when we do that, that is what causes dis-ease. When we're not acknowledging all of our emotions, the full spectrum, we're just acknowledging that one part, which is positive. And the reason why we're here on Earth is to understand both. You can't know the positive without knowing the negative, and vice versa. You can't know the light without knowing the dark. You can't know the dark without knowing the light. So it's beneficial to look at all of it. Do that light work. Shine a light on all that darkness. Acknowledge that, yes, sometimes things just suck. They just do. Even though it may be happening for a good reason. Even though it's teaching us a very helpful lesson to help us grow and expand. It doesn't take away from how painful it can be in that moment, especially before you have the awareness, before you have the understanding, before you go through that situation entirely and can look back and think, oh, wow, that really helped me because of this. Or I learned this, or, I got this out of it. So I think it's a necessary step before we get to all the positive part, is to also go into the negative part. Again, we don't have to stay there and dwell there and camp there, but at least acknowledge those feelings. And so what I realized what I was doing with my husband is I was doing the complete opposite, because he would complain to me about the same things over and over again, and I just got tired of hearing it. And so he would complain about the same thing, and I would always have the same advice. So instead of letting him fully vent about his problems, what he was feeling, I would kind of stop him immediately and be like, okay, well, this is what you do, like over again. Like I would just keep repeating. He would repeat himself, different days about the problem, and I would just keep repeating the same things about what I thought the solution could be, or possible solutions. And I noticed after a while how he did seem to get more angry and felt very unheard and started repressing his feelings more, which still wasn't good, wasn't healthy. And with losing my patience, I noticed I stopped listening, really. I wasn't fully listening, and I wasn't actively listening. I was just waiting until a moment where I could interject and say what I wanted to say. And again, this was subconscious. I didn't mean to. I thought I was being helpful by giving the advice. And advice can be helpful, but sometimes people don't want advice, or maybe they just want someone to listen. They want to unpack their emotions and what they're feeling to someone else. And I notice when I became more conscious about this, and I applied it actively, I was like, okay, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to listen, I'm not going to say anything, I'm not going to give advice. I'm just going to be like, I understand, I hear you. And I remember the first time I did that, he came up with a solution that worked best for him all on his own. I didn't even need to do anything. I didn't need to put all that energy and effort and frustration into trying to fix the situation right away so that he could be happy. And that's a whole nother story, but I do realize now, especially with studying something called human design, which is kind of like astrology and science and something else, but I realized that I'm a reflector, which is only 1% of the population, and that basically, again, I'm just very empathetic. And so it's like I felt like I had to control other people in a way of being happy, like trying to make them happy by doing everything for them so that they could be happy, so I wouldn't have to feel the wrath of their emotions if they were unhappy. Like if they're miserable, I can feel that. If they're depressed or angry, I can feel that as if it's my own. And so I would give up my own happiness a lot of times to make someone else happy, because I would rather deal with my unhappiness than deal with someone else's. That to me was more difficult. So that is a whole nother thing I had to work on, that I'm still working on, that maybe I can talk more in detail in another video. But that is part of the spiritual bypassing. It's like I felt like I couldn't deal with my husband's emotions when he was upset, especially because we live together. We live in a tiny RV. We're together 24/7. He works from home. I'm at home, and I feel that. I feel that on a very intense level versus my friend who lives in a whole nother state that I only see, once in a while. And that way, that's why it was easier for me to kind of separate being so emotional about her being emotional. But then it was hard for me to separate being emotional when my husband was emotional. And also I realized I was spiritually bypassing my own feelings as well. I would do the same thing to myself, where if I was feeling negative or down or sad or angry or any of those lower vibrational emotions, that I would quickly just be like, again, things like, everything happens for a reason. It's all going to work out. It is what it is. I can't do anything about it now. The universe is going to take care of it. All of those things, again, things that I believe, things that I'm not saying are wrong or bad to think. It's just, I didn't allow myself to go through that pain, to feel fully that pain and anguish and hurt and sadness, and then let it go. And then get to the part of, everything happens for a reason. It's all going to work out. I would skip those first two steps. And I would just try to get to the positive side right away. I was bypassing my emotions with my spiritual beliefs. And I think there's quite a few people in the spiritual community who do this as well. Especially with the law of attraction, we're taught, focus on what you want, focus on the positive, focus only on good things. Otherwise, if you focus on bad things, then, oh my God, you're going to attract just bad things. Don't ever think about the bad things ever. But the ironic part is by trying not to think about those negative or bad things, we suppress them. And it's still stuck in our energy field. It's still stuck in our spirit and our aura and our bodies physically. Because the more, what is it I always say? The more, like what I always say is, what you resist persists. So if you're resisting those negative emotions by distracting yourself, by trying not to think about it, by trying to replace it with something else, it's still there. And so then it's still suppressed in, your chakras, your body, and your energy field, and you're still going to be attracting things that are on that level of those emotions that are suppressed, that you're not allowing yourself to feel. And that, I think, defeats the point and the purpose of being here. Is we're supposed to experience everything that's happening in our life, not act like it's not happening, not be in denial about it. Sometimes things are happening, and like, they are happening for a reason. They are here to teach us a lesson. And most likely we did contract these experiences before we came here. This is just what I believe about our soul contracts. So if we're going to be here, let's truly be here. Let's not just be half here in the dualistic nature of just the one side, the light, the positive. We're here to experience both. And the sooner that we acknowledge how we feel, we make space for ourselves, and we sit in the quiet alone and feel those emotions, acknowledge them, maybe journal, maybe go for a walk, maybe meditate. And yes, we can do this with other people too. We can do this with family and friends. And I highly recommend that if you are going to try to process your emotions with friends or family instead of completely on your own, a great person to go to is usually a therapist. I would say if you find a therapist you really resonate with. But if you're gonna do it with friends and family, make sure that it's with someone who isn't spiritually bypassing your own emotions when you talk to them. Make sure it is someone that is capable of holding space for you. That's the best way to do it, in my opinion. Otherwise, it's not as beneficial. But like I said, you can do this on your own. You can do this with friends. You can do this with family. You can do this with a therapist. As long as they're able to hold space and not bypass your emotions, just allow you to talk without judgment and to listen. And if you want advice, maybe ask them for advice, or if they ask you if you want their advice, and you can let them know if you do or you don't, or you just want someone to listen. And maybe you do figure it out on your own. A lot of times in therapy, I did realize that if I just talked and talked and talked, and the therapist would ask certain questions to make me think more about how I felt, then I could process it virtually on my own almost. It's like I came up with the answers. And that's a beautiful thing. That is a great example of holding space. All right, everyone. I believe that is going to be the end of today's video. I just kind of go and go until I've said everything I felt like I wanted to say. And then I just end it there. And I feel like this video feels complete as of right now. I'm sure I'll think of things later to say, but these videos are a great way of me holding space for myself, for example, because it's very therapeutic for me to just speak to a camera that is not judging me and allowing me to just say exactly what I want and how I feel. And anybody on the other side watching the video is, of course, free to watch it or not watch it as much or as little as they want. And I think that is a beautiful thing. I'm not forcing it on anyone, but hopefully it may resonate with some of you and maybe give you a new perspective or help you in some way. I'm hoping that maybe if you realize you're that you're using spirituality to bypass your own emotions and others, that you can now maybe make a change with that because you've brought awareness to it. Because we can't make changes if we don't even know what's going on, like what there is even to change. All right, I hope you guys have a beautiful day or night. Make sure to like this video if you do, leave a comment if you want to tell me your thoughts, share it if you think it's helpful for someone else. And as always, I hope to see you in my next video. Bye everyone. Peace, love, and light to you.